Ontario announced today that it's going 100% coal-free. To mark the occasion, we invited Vice President Al Gore to speak at an event with Premier Kathleen Wynne. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. It's not very often that we get to bring so many people together to mark a major victory for the climate. My name's Tim Gray. I'm the Executive Director of Environmental Defense, and we're a nonprofit environmental organization based here in Toronto. We protect green space and clean water, get toxic out of our lives, and encourage a move away from polluting fossil fuels by building a clean energy society. Today, the UN talks in Warsaw enter their final hours. And we all know that it's a time when people have largely lost hope that world leaders are going to agree to act together to fight climate change. And with that going on at an international level, we thought it was even more important to showcase something real, something that's being done here in Ontario. We're proving that it can be done, that bold leadership on climate change is possible, and that today, Ontario is poised to kick the coal habit forever. And this is a huge achievement. Now I'd like to introduce Ontario's Premier Kathleen Wynne to say a few words about how Ontario has accomplished this, and more importantly, I think for the province and for all of us, is what's next.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you so much for your introduction and for the work that you do. As we were just discussing, your job is to push us, right? So I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour, Ani, Bojo. It's wonderful to be gathering with you all here on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit. All of you up there, too. It's wonderful to be here. And I want to thank Tim and everyone at Environmental Defense for putting together this fantastic event. And I'm very pleased to be joined by our Minister of Energy, Bob Chiarelli, and our Minister of the Environment, Jim Bradley. And I heard Deb Matthews laugh, our Minister of Health. There she is. Bob is showing tremendous leadership on energy issues in Ontario, and I'm very proud to have him in that role. Yes, he's wonderful. And Jim has been a passionate advocate for environmental issues since the 1980s and is helping to drive our leadership on that portfolio. And he was just talking with Vice President about acid rain and his role between 85 and 90. And Jim, it's wonderful to have you in that role. That's right. He's not old, he's just experienced. And it's a huge honor to be here with you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you very much for being here. It is a huge pleasure to be with you all here today. For nearly 30 years, Environmental Defense has been at the forefront of the environmental movement in Canada, helping to raise awareness of ecological challenges and protect the health of Canadians. Climate change is a transformative issue and one of the most urgent environmental challenges of our time. The most recent report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a group that consists of thousands of the world's leading climate scientists, has warned us once again that our climate system is getting warmer. In fact, they said it is unequivocal that our climate system is heating up. I think that there's no denying that climate change is happening, even though some still have their heads buried firmly in the sand, and there's no denying that the urgency of the discussion of infrastructure construction, for example, across the country is heightened by this reality. But we have the power to change our behaviors and to reverse this increasingly critical problem. We need to act now, not next year, not 6 months from now. We cannot put this off, because if climate change is left unchecked, it will lead to rising sea levels, more sweltering heat waves, more disappearing glaciers, and extreme weather events that could have potentially devastating consequences on our health, on our environment, our economy, and our lives. And of course, there are aid agencies and global leaders saying that climate change has already contributed to humanitarian disasters disasters like Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. So if we don't move to reverse climate change now, we could see even more catastrophes around the globe. And we'll have to deal with the aftermath of more events like the flooding that we experienced here in Toronto and in Calgary over the summer. But we can do something about it. We know that. We can work together as stewards of our natural environment. And I would contend that it's our moral duty to take action to protect our children, our grandchildren, and our fellow citizens. We're lucky today to be in the presence of a man who has been fighting on these fronts for many years. Former Vice President Al Gore, now chairman of the Climate Reality Project, has communicated to the world the urgency and the importance of this issue, and I think we owe him a debt of gratitude for the work that he has done. Absolutely. From his book, Earth in the Balance, which warned us about the depletion of the ozone layer, the destruction of rainforests, and the outbreak of global warming, to his 2006 documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, which helped educate international audiences about the realities of climate change, the former Vice President has told us that we have to act now to have a real impact. I think actually what he's told us that acting before now is what should have happened, but acting now is the next best thing. And here in Ontario, we've been doing our part, and we will continue to heed this call. We're poised to close the largest coal plant in North America, Nanticoke Generating Station. This is the last major step in our plan to eliminate coal from the province entirely. Thank you. At its peak, Nanticoke alone produced about 21 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Shutting it down is not only the right thing for Ontario, but an important symbol in the fight against climate change in North America. In fact, even globally, our coal policy is being noticed. Tim mentioned the Warsaw Conference, and at the Warsaw Climate Change Conference, as we speak, we're being praised as one of the first places in the world to break our coal addiction despite a federal government that is hostile to climate action. That's right. Becoming a coal-free province is the equivalent of taking up to 7 million cars off the road, which means we'll have cleaner air to breathe while saving Ontario $4.4 billion in health, financial, and environmental costs. As a byproduct of this action, embracing 21st century energy alternatives creates jobs as well. Thanks to our Green Energy Act and our world-leading feed-in tariff program, we've created 31,000 jobs, built 1,300 wind turbines, and we have the greatest solar power capacity in Canada. As the costs of fossil fuels rise, the price of renewable energy is falling. That means supporting clean energy is good for our health, it's good for the environment, and for the economy. But we want to go farther. We want to do more, and that's why I'm proud today to announce that we will be introducing new legislation that, if passed, will make it illegal to burn coal. Good idea. Mais nous voulons aller encore plus loin. Nous voulons en faire plus. C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, je suis fière d'annoncer que nous allons présenter un nouveau projet de loi qui, si adopté, fera en sorte qu'il sera illégal de brûler de charbon. Minister Bradley will introduce this bill on Monday in the legislature. The proposed act would enshrine in legislation what the Ontario government has committed to do: eliminate coal-fired electricity, and it would prevent new coal plants from being constructed in the future. As a new Premier leading a minority government, I think it's important to reaffirm and to strengthen our commitment to get off coal in Ontario. I ask that the opposition parties support this bill and move it forward through the legislature quickly. We want to close the door on coal, and we don't want to go back. Nous voulons mettre fin au chapitre du charbon et ne jamais plus y revenir. Ontario is doing the heavy lifting on the climate change file in Canada. Taken together, our work on eliminating coal and investing in renewables is the strongest action being taken in North America to fight climate change. In fact, Ontario will be the first jurisdiction in North America to ban coal. And while we know that there is still much more to do, we're committed to working positively and proactively with groups like Environmental Defence so that we can continue to make a real difference. Don't misunderstand me. The work is far from done. We're proud of our action to get rid of coal and build renewables. And moving forward as Premier, I will make sure Ontario keeps doing its part to fight climate change. We will continue to add renewable energy to the supply mix. This will be a key part of our new long-term energy plan, which will be released within weeks. And we'll make sure that we're on track to meet the targets that we've set to reduce emissions. And we're committed to finding ways to build the public infrastructure needed to curb the growth in transportation emissions. We're proud to be part of the fight against climate change here in Ontario, and I am so inspired to work with so many of you here today who have done so much to protect our environment and to secure our future. Thank you so very much. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you, Premier Wynne. Here in Ontario, we've been talking about getting rid of coal for a while. And I think sometimes we lose significance of the sight of it. I know that for environmental organizations such as ours, we work to try and secure a government commitment to something and then we move on to the next thing. But sometimes you really need to stop and celebrate what's been accomplished. And as the Premier mentioned, this is not just a local accomplishment, not just important for Ontario and Canada, but it's important on the international stage. If we were an Ontario state, we'd be the 6th largest economy in North America, just slightly smaller than Florida. So it's not only an accomplishment for here, but within the North American and international context. I want to thank the province, Premier Wynne, Ministers Chiarelli and Bradley, for all the work that you've done on this, and also former Premier Dalton McGuinty for his leadership on this file when he was Premier. And many others, both within the and many others within inside of government and outside who made this accomplishment possible. And to provide us now with some context on the international stage and international relevance of this move, I'd like to introduce Vice President Al Gore, who since he left office has spent almost all of his time traveling the world, organizing people as part of the Climate Reality Project, educating people, developing a 5 million person campaign team around the planet to make a difference. This is a man who's dedicated his life to doing something about climate change, and I'm so happy to have him here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Tim. And ladies and gentlemen, it really is an honor to be able to participate in such a happy and consequential event. Thank you all for coming. And may I say, first of all, Premier Kathleen Wynne, congratulations on your vision and leadership. Thank you for the steps that you have taken and have announced today. I will elaborate in just a moment on why they are so significant for our world as a whole, but I wanted to say on behalf of all around the world who understand the nature of the climate challenge and the opportunity it presents, thank you. You're doing a fantastic job. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. And to Bob Chiarelli, Minister of Energy, and Jim Bradley, Minister of the Environment, Deb Matthews, Minister of Health, and other distinguished guests who are here. I want to say a special word of welcome to the climate leaders who have participated in the training program and are part of the Climate Reality Project. Could I see a show of hands of those who have gone through this training all the way up? Thank you all very much. Thank you for your commitment and hard work. It has been a pleasure to to come here and meet with all of you. And I want to thank Audrey DePaul, the Canadian National Manager for the Climate Reality Project Canada. Thank you very, very much. So here we are, and the world as a whole is now trying to figure out how to deal with a very serious threat to the future of human civilization. That phrase may still sound overly dire to some ears, but not too many years from now, there will be those who ask, who knew? You? If not, why not? Every single National Academy of Science of every nation on this planet agrees with the consensus. Every professional scientific society agrees with the consensus. 97 to 98% of all the climate scientists in the world agree with the consensus. Mother Nature is proclaiming the urgency of this crisis in ever more easily understandable tones. And the future is at risk. If you don't want to hear that, then I don't know what to say. But there will be a day of reckoning. Our children, and really even before some of the children alive today come of age, generations present and future will ask, what were you doing about this? Well, part of the hopeful and positive answer is going to be in Ontario, under the leadership of Premier Wynne, and with her great leadership team, and thanks to Tim Gray and all of the folks at Environmental Defense and groups led by the Ontario Clean Air Alliance and the Climate Reality Project and others, the answer has been, well, we've decided to do something about it. And let me just mark this well. Ontario has become the first regional jurisdiction in all of North America to take these steps to ban the burning of coal. Congratulations, Ontario, and thank you, Ontario. Let me mention two groups of people who are not here with us. One group has been alluded to, the other indirectly. But as we meet and as we speak here together, tens of thousands of people in the Philippines are still searching for food, water, and shelter. The events that took place there were beyond any norms ever seen. It was as if there was a combination of the largest tornado ever seen and a tsunami, both at the same time. Sort of like that movie last summer, Sharknado. I don't mean to make light of it. What I'm trying to punch through is the wall of denial and resistance to seeing how dramatically the reality has changed in our world. We've got to wake up to it. We've got to do something to change our current course. And again, thank God for the people of Ontario providing such leadership. Just 3 days ago in Sardinia in the Mediterranean, 17 inches of rain in 24 hours. I could go through the list of places where these Incredible, unprecedented downpours are taking place. In my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee, just 3 years ago, thousands of my neighbors lost their homes and businesses in what they called a once-in-a-thousand-year downpour and flood, and they didn't have insurance because there had never ever been floods in the areas affected. New York City and New Jersey 1 year ago, Superstorm Sandy. You know, when the movie An Inconvenient Truth came out several years ago, the single most criticized part of that movie was an animation sequence that showed the ocean water from the Atlantic going into the World Trade Center Memorial site. And the deniers said, that's ridiculous and demagogic. That could never happen. Well, it happened. Years ahead of schedule, last October 29th, a year ago. The days before and the day of that tragedy, the temperature of the Atlantic Ocean just offshore was 9 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius warmer than normal. The hottest ocean waters in the world, where the temperature increases have been the fastest, are the waters in which the Philippines are found. And because the warmer ocean water expands, sea level has risen faster in the Philippines than anywhere else. We're seeing a disruption of the water cycle with much larger downpours because much more water vapor is evaporating into the air and the warmer air holds much more, so we get these incredible downpours. And you mentioned in Calgary, including in Alberta, including in downtown Calgary, and in Ontario, including Toronto, the flooding this past summer was highly unusual. Just 2 days ago, these highly unusual F4 tornadoes came through just south of the border between our two countries, just tearing apart whole communities. And the scientists won't say that tornadoes are necessarily connected to climate change. But when you put more energy into a system, it becomes more energetic. We are putting 90 million tons of global warming pollution into the atmosphere every single day. And the 90 million tons we put up there today, 20% of it will still be warming the earth 10,000 years from now. If we take action, if we were magically able to do in the world as a whole what Ontario is announcing today, then half of the CO2 would fall out in a single generation. We can solve this, but we need to get busy and follow Ontario's lead, because the cumulative amount of man-made global warming pollution in that thin shell of atmosphere we call the sky now traps as much extra heat energy every day as would be released by 400,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs exploding on the surface of our planet every 24 hours. Now, we live on a big planet, but that's a lot of energy. And that is what is raising the temperatures, disrupting the water cycle, making the droughts deeper, raising the sea level, moving infectious diseases from the tropics and subtropics into higher latitudes, moving tick-borne diseases into parts of Canada that never experienced them in the past, for example, making dengue fever or breakbone fever a renewed threat in many parts of the world. But we have an opportunity to act, and in acting, secure a brighter and better, more hopeful and more prosperous future. And for those who are tempted to succumb to any hint of despair, let me tell you, we are going to prevail. And today's event is a sure sign that we are going to prevail. Ontario is taking the lead, but people elsewhere are beginning to move as well. China has just announced the banning of any new coal burning in 3 of their most heavily polluted cities. They have announced a new cap and trade system in 2 cities and 5 provinces as a pilot for a nationwide cap and trade program in 2015. California began a cap and trade system as of January 1. One of the businesses that has made possible in California and quite a few other American states is a solar panel business model where the business comes to a homeowner or business owner and says, here's the proposition. We'll put solar panels all over your roof, and your electricity bills will go down by a quarter the next day, and it will cost you nothing. We'll do it for free because the savings are enough to make a profit for the business and to generate big savings for the homeowner and the business owner. In 2010, globally, for the first time, aggregate investment in renewable energy exceeded, for the first time, aggregate global investment in fossil fuels. The cost for renewable energy is coming down. As of last year, 11 nations crossed the threshold beyond which renewable energy became cheaper than energy from burning coal. This year, 3 more nations joined that list. By 2020, less than 7 years from today, because renewable energy is coming down steadily and significantly in price, 85% of the world's people will live in nations and jurisdictions where electricity from renewables is cheaper than electricity from the grid average price from all other sources. Let me tell you, that is significant. Some changes are more significant than you can recognize in the incremental shift that marks them. The difference between 0 degrees and 1 degree, or in Fahrenheit, 32 and 33, is a difference of more than 1 degree. It's the difference between ice and water. And similarly, the difference between renewable power above the grid average price compared to below the grid average price is not a small difference. You've heard of the Tea Party in the United States of America. Let me tell you a story about the Atlanta, Georgia Tea Party. I'll be in Atlanta tomorrow. In Atlanta, Georgia, the Tea Party has just joined forces with the Sierra Club in order to fight for the repeal of legislation in the state of Georgia that had been passed at the behest of the Koch brothers and the other coal and carbon polluters that make it illegal to lease solar panels on rooftops. Why does the Tea Party in Atlanta, Georgia, want to join hands with the Sierra Club to repeal that law? Because they want to save money. They want to use common sense to speed up the availability of cheaper, more reliable, renewable electricity. In the developing countries, this is even more true. Let me draw an analogy for you. Back in 1980, long time ago, then as now, I like to consider myself a technology geek wannabe, an early adopter. You know, something new comes out, if it looks cool, I'm kind of more vulnerable than a lot of people to buying it and trying it out. So I bought one of those early mobile phones. I thought that big old brick was the coolest looking thing. I look back at pictures of that now and I go, whoa. In that same year, AT&T, which was still then Ma Bell, made a long, expensive, and careful international market survey to predict how many of those mobile phones would be sold 20 years later by the year 2000. And when they finished their work, they confidently predicted that an astounding 900,000 of those phones would be sold. And of course, they were off. They were not only off, they were way off. 109 million were sold. They were off by 120x. And now there are 5 billion of them, only 13 years after that. Now, why were they not only wrong, but way wrong? 4 reasons. Number one, they did not count on the steady cost reduction of that technology. Or second, the steady improvement in quality. Or third, in the fact that the decision to purchase was in the hands of individuals, whether in the Tea Party or the Sierra Club or whatever, not utilities, not centralized institutions. And fourth, they did not factor into their projections the fact that the developing and emerging economies did not have elaborate grids of land, line, telephone, wires, and poles, so they could just leapfrog that technology in the lower income countries, and they did. Now, look at the projections on solar panels and windmills and energy efficiency. Once again, the cost down curve is impressive. It's not like Moore's Law, but it's impressive, and it's continuing to go down. And the quality and reliability goes up. And the decision to purchase is in the hands of individuals. And those developing countries don't have telephone lines either, don't have power lines, same as they didn't have telephone lines. So they're leapfrogging, and the fastest growth is in the emerging economies and the developing economies. And as the volumes increase, the benefits of scale are increasing. The more renewable energy we use, the cheaper it gets. The more fossil fuel the world uses, the more expensive it gets. The lines are crossing. We are going to win this struggle. We are going to safeguard our future. I want to compliment you on emphasizing conservation. Conservation first. And efficiency, because there are hundreds of new and rapidly improving technologies to improve the efficiency with which we use energy. Used to be that they thought energy use and employment just went up and down together. That's broken now. We can improve employment while reducing energy use. But in closing, ladies and gentlemen, we can talk about the jobs that are created. We can talk about reducing pollution, which is one of the main reasons why China's getting in gear finally. But we've got to keep front of mind what our future is all about. Who are we as human beings? Do we care about the future? Yeah, of course we do. But we have got to understand that we as individuals are moral beings. I remember when I was a boy of 11 years old in the American South in Tennessee, a young African-American man living in a very rural, remote area of Georgia wrote a letter to Martin Luther King Jr., wanting to know how he could be a part of fighting for justice in the Civil Rights Revolution. And by return mail, he got a response with 2 Greyhound bus tickets to Nashville, Tennessee, near where I was growing up. John Lewis was his name. He went to the American Baptist Seminary, and he was introduced to a pastor at Vanderbilt Divinity School who instructed him in the teachings of Martin Luther King Jr. And he organized his colleagues and went to downtown Nashville, where the lunch counters were segregated by race, and peacefully, quietly, determinedly took his place. And his head was beaten in. But then he went back again, peacefully, respectfully. 3 months later, all those lunch counters were desegregated, and that movement spread all across the South. And then they went to the movie theaters. And 50 miles to the east, on the farm where I was growing up in the summers, one of my friends one day made some racist comment, and another one of my friends said, "Shut up, we don't talk that way anymore." That conversation was one in millions of conversations. And the laws changed because it had been resolved into a choice between what is right and what is wrong. And when a question becomes a choice between right and wrong, the outcome is inevitable. And that is the reason why this outcome is inevitable. Earlier this year, in my country, there was a news story about two gay men holding hands waiting in line for a pizza. And some homophobic jerk walked by and made a hateful comment. And according to the news story, literally every other person in that line turned and said, "Shut up, we don't talk like that anymore." We are winning that conversation. It has also become a question of what is right and what is wrong. When the world scientists and again Mother Nature say to us, "Are you willing to continue destroying the climate conditions that give rise to the flourishing of human civilization, or will you take action to safeguard the integrity of the conditions that are necessary for us and future generations to survive?" That's a question of right and wrong. And I'll close by saying there will be one other question, one of two. I'm not sure which it'll be. But years from now, depending upon the circumstances that we allow to unfold, the next generation will ask one of two questions. If they see the continued superstorms and deadly droughts and tropical diseases ravaging temperate zones and sea level rise and the collapse of governance in places where the storms are too powerful and too frequent for people to recover and adapt and survive, if they do not have hope, if they look at their children and feel a sense of despair, they would be well justified in asking of us, "What were you thinking? Why did you not act?" But if they look around them and see a world in renewal, with renewable energy and conservation and efficiency and new technologies, new clean and green technologies as yet undreamed of because we made a commitment to move in that direction, if they see the pollution levels falling, if they feel hope in their hearts and look at their own children and feel definitely their future is going to be brighter still, they'll look back and ask of us, "How did you find the moral courage to change, to rise up, to act?" And part of the answer will be Ontario, Canada led the way.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President. If I had any lack of motivation to get out of bed in the morning to do some good things, it's all been restored. I just want to say a few closing remarks. Ontario has taken a big step, but the work is far from done. It never is. Governments, business, and citizens must find solutions to fight climate change and build a clean, prosperous, low-carbon economy. I promise that Environmental Defense will be here to do our part. I want to thank everyone, all of you up there and down here, for being here today. I would say we should all take a moment to be proud of what has been accomplished here in Ontario. Today shows that change can happen. It took leadership from our elected officials, of course, but it also came from the hard work of activists, doctors, and nurses, many of which are here today. Jack Gibbons and the Ontario Clean Air Alliance deserve great praise for their tireless and incredibly effective Every time you showed up somewhere new to go to some other event about something else, there'd be something there from the Ontario Clean Air Alliance. Get rid of coal, get rid of coal. It was an incredible campaign. Also, Bruce Laurie, former chair of Environmental Defence, who had the prescience to know that Ontario could make the change and worked so hard to ensure that the effort was focused, strategic, and supported. And of course, nothing would have happened without the backing of people like all of you here today who wanted cleaner air and a healthy future and were willing to speak up for it. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.